We will start our meeting today reading the message from the book Green Light by Francisco Cândido Xavier and André Luiz. It's just to think about. You are able to control the words before speaking them. However, you have to bear the consequences of the words that you do say to someone. Live in a way that you will always have peace of mind without neglecting your physical appearance. Talking about food, it is important to remember the Roman phrase, there are people who dig their graves by their own mouth. As much as you can in any appointment or task to be fulfilled, arrive at least 10 minutes earlier. Idleness paralyzes any faculty. A spontaneous smile is a blessing, attracting even more blessings. Serving beyond your own duty is not flattering, but it provides security. The more you help others, the more support you receive on solving your own problems. It is normal to have people who envy you, but it is not usual to have enemies. For each action of goodness practiced by you, a light is turned on your pathway. Those who speak little have listened better, and those who have listened better will earn much more.
And that way we start our meeting today. In this loving ambient prepared by those who anticipated us, the Enlightened Spirits, our dear friends, who help us all in these studies where we gather in the name of God as brothers and sisters in humanity in order to learn a bit more about the natural laws in the universe, to learn a bit more about ourselves as immortal beings, as beings who are essentially of goodness, of light and love, in the pathway of evolution, in the pathway of progress. We start by expressing our gratitude towards the infinite love that Jesus presents to all of us, our gratitude towards the Creator of everything and everyone, God, towards His infinite love expressed to all of us. Our gratitude for this opportunity in this existence for us to gather ourselves and all of those in the Spirit, to reflect, to change concepts, to learn a bit more, to upgrade our belief systems. As we believe in the law of evolution, that means we evolve in our thinking, in our analyzing, expressing with more certainty the information that is given by the Enlightened Spirits, as we advance in assimilating them, in comprehending them, and especially and above all, choosing to live in the practical way, according to the laws of love which govern our lives, wherever we are and with who we are. May the blessings of the superior spirits follow upon each one of us. And may we open our hearts and minds as learners as we all are. And in that way, we're starting our meeting today. So be it. So we carry on our studies which happen on a weekly basis, ourselves and all of those who may be here, welcome, and all of those who may be following us through the live transmission. Our study about Spiritism, inspiring lives, is a purpose which brings the consoling, hopeful, and universal message of Spiritism to the hearts of English speakers. English speakers, we understand, as always we mention, are our brothers and sisters in humanity. Doesn't matter from which culture, from which country, we are all children of God. And within that in mind, we carry on today studying what we already are studying for a couple of weeks, which is what are the main principles of Spiritism. We studied in the previous weeks about the immortality of the soul. We studied about the plurality of existences. We studied about God. And today we carry on a study as a main principle of Spiritism about Jesus or is our model. So that is what we will be studying to initiate, and later on we carry on with the free will as well. So we started with Jesus is our model. Then we carry on here now, reading, and then we discuss together as we understand we are all brothers and sisters in humanity and are learners in this stage of evolution where we are. We start by Jesus is the guide and model for all humanity. The teachings he taught and exemplified are the purest expression of God's law. The morality of Christ, as contained in the Gospels, is the guide for the secure progress of all human beings. Its practice is the solution for all human problems and the objective to be attained by each individual. So what do we understand now when we read it? Partially I read and I didn't shift the slide, yeah? But here we are now. What comes to our minds when we understand that? Would you like to regulate it a bit so that comes up, please? When we say within Spiritism that Jesus is our model, which is one of the principles within Spiritism, how do we understand that? We also do evolve, therefore our thinking also evolves. But today, how do we understand that? Jesus is our model. Who is Jesus? We can start to ask, especially for those who never heard about. Who is Jesus? Within our ability to express today.
We see Jesus in Spiritism as a spirit like us, but which is much more evolved. And Kardec asked this question, okay, so if we learn that we need to change our behavior, so who we should look for, who should be our guide? And the Spirit said, Jesus is the highest spirit who incarnated on earth. Mm-hmm. So this is the guide and the model you have to look for when you need to make any decisions on change.
Okay, so he is our brother. He is the most evolved being who was on earth so far. And as you rightly said, we look forward, we look up to him in order for us also to evolve into progress. Is that clear? Susanna, anything? Yes? Then we carry on here. Reflecting within the Spirit's book now, the question 625, when Allan Kardec wisely asked the Enlightened Spirits the question, what is the most perfect type that God has offered to human beings as their guide and model? And the answer is very clear, Jesus. And they carry on explaining to us now. Jesus is the realization of the highest moral perfection that human beings may attain on earth. God offers Jesus as our most perfect model, and the teachings taught by him are the purest expression of divine law, because he was animated by the divine spirit and was the purest being, virtuous, that has ever walked on earth. So now, if we ask ourselves, we know within Spiritism that Jesus is the most perfect spirit who ever walked on earth. He was also incarnated. How long ago? More than 2,000 years ago, correct? And he is our model and guide for us to model what? Our behavior. What else? So when we see here, what is it? The divine and was the purest being. Purest being, what we understand. I put in brackets, that is not in the book. But anyway, I added that. So what do we understand when we are referred? He was the most purest being in terms of virtues. Therefore, he is our guide and model for us to continue on our perfection process, and also the model for us to develop our virtues. What are virtues?
Forgiveness, being able to forgive, being kind. And Jesus was the expression of the purest virtues that we can see. He expressed forgiveness at the highest level that you could see, or kindness, respect.
Okay, so virtues would be right in saying that virtues are the highest potential of the soul of the spirit, that we, through the law of reincarnation, when we are on earth, we continue to develop those higher potentials of the soul of the spirit, which one of them is learning to forgive ourselves, learning to forgive others, and Jesus was and still is the model of references because he didn't have preferences. He applied that in his way, in his behavior to everyone. Then you said, which other virtue? Kindness, respect to ourselves and towards others, kindness towards ourselves and towards others. Which other virtues? Learning to be patient, learning to be committed with ourselves and with others. And which level? Ego self. When we intend to promote ourselves as spiritual, of course, we want to learn to develop the big virtue of commitment based on the essence of ourselves. Commitment, what else? Learning to be persistent in our proposals, to become better, to improve ourselves, because we as children of God bring within innate the actualization process, but we need to learn to stimulate those values. Responsibility is another virtue. Yes, that also when we develop responsibility towards our existences, we potentialize our choices in terms of following what is more adequate in our journey in terms of immortal beings, knowing that our choices from today, they will impact the next moment, the next day, the next weeks, the next months, and the next existences as well, because we always inherit our own selves. Any other virtue? Learn to cooperate for the good of all. Is that a virtue? Is that what Jesus came to teach?
Obedience.
Learn to be obedient to whom? To mankind?
To God.
To God to start with, but we also can be obedient to human beings, isn't it? We need to learn also to respect our parents, because we all have parents. We need to respect other people. So obedience, again, is a great virtue which helps us also to develop and expand our ability to love. Resignation is another virtue which we also, Jesus exemplified very much that with everyone. Obedience to God, as was mentioned, because he was very loyal, very loyal is the best way, with God, that he constantly asked himself, whatever is your will, may that be done. Yeah? Any other virtue? Punctuality, is that a virtue? Was that good with Jesus? He was punctual with God. Mom and dad was seeking where he was, and there he was with the big guys teaching about the good news, yeah? So we have plenty of values, and also those that we know now in this stage of planet of trials and expiations. Again, as more as we evolve, we will become aware of more virtues, yes? And then now moving on, carry on. Now the reference from the Spirit Review, the Journal of Psychological Studies from 859, where we learn. Susanna, read it for us, please.
And give the example that is to confirm the conduct with the belief, so as to serve as a model for others to change.
So how do we understand that? Within the main principle of Spiritism, Jesus is our model. If you were to reframe it with our own words, how would that be? To also help others who may also be studying with us or may have less understanding, how could we express it in our way that perhaps could also benefit others?
Because we're still imperfect, the way we express our virtues is imperfect, so we are not sure how to behave or what choice to make. We could ask, okay, what would Jesus do? And take it from there. It is my not fault. Like what he taught with his example and with his words as well.
Yes. Do we have Jesus as our model and guide? Are we also models for others? Yes, we are. This is what he mentions. And give the example, because Jesus was a model because he lived according to his beliefs. And that is to conform the conduct with the belief, so as to serve as a model for others to change. So when we allow ourselves to be guided by our model Jesus, and we transform ourselves gradually, it's a gradual process, we improve ourselves more and more, we become better, naturally we become models for others who are behind us in the journey of evolution. We all have those who are in front of us, we all have those who are behind us. So as more as we promote ourselves spiritually, more we serve as a model for others that are also watching us or are following us in the learning process.
And the importance of studying as well, to truly understand what Jesus wanted to teach. Because we might not understand it fully, but don't give up. Carry on understanding, because one day we will understand what it means.
Yes, the continuation.
It might seem controversial, but we need to study to understand it.
Yes, and why could it be controversial for us at the beginning?
Because we could be because of our lack of understanding, could be because of our very strong old belief systems.
Because we are all immortal beings, have been living for centuries and centuries through many and many different existences, and therefore we learned something throughout all this time, isn't it? But when we study human history or about religion, we know that we learn something which is sometimes not quite right according to the real message that Jesus brought us. And we all may have on our unconscious memory some belief systems, some concepts. As more as we carry on his study, we will actualize ourselves and really understand that Jesus, who brings the word of God, God is love. So therefore the message is always about love. It's never about hate. It's never about being unfair to each other, but learn to be fraternal. Good. Now we carry on with free will. Free will be the rest of the time that we will be reflecting today, because that is a huge principle in Spiritism. Why is it a huge principle? One of the main principles in Spiritism.
I'm fascinated about free will, because I find it so interesting, because at the same time we learn we have free will, sometimes it seems that we don't. Because because of our negativities, we're so stuck to make choices, whether we do have free will. And not just in Spiritism. Today, there's a lot of scientific research into free will, and we can learn a lot.
A lot, yes, yes. Where do we start? Because it's such a huge, broad and huge subject. Where do we start? Do you think it's a good idea for us to start in the beginning? If we start at the beginning, I guess it will be easier for us to follow up. Therefore, how did we start? Where was our start point? Now we are lost about our beginning. We have been created by God, yes? Simple and ignorant. And since then, where have we been learning as an intelligent principle? I give some clues. Yeah? Mineral Kingdom, what did we learn there? You can look if you don't know. About attraction. And then when we concluded that period of learning, where did we carry on learning? In the vegetable kingdom, learning what? Sensations. And when we concluded that period, we carry on learning in the animal kingdom, learning to develop the instinct. And then we carry on for us in the human kingdom where we are, and learning about free will, continuing thinking and reason. So when we reach this level, in this stage of our evolution, we have the free will. Where is that coming from? Where did the free will come from?
It's a faculty given to us by God.
The free will is one of the faculties given by God since our creation, and now that we reach the level of the human kingdom, here, the reason level, we now are invited to develop the free will, which was given as a faculty by God for us now to develop it according to God's views. Good. So we start by Rodolfo Caligaris, who says, free will is the faculty that the individual have to determine their own conduct. How do we understand that? How would we explain that? Simple, short phrase. Faculty we explained already, that has been given by God, the creator of everything and everyone, that the individual have to determine their own conduct. So how could we say that? What is conduct?
We can make our choices, but we have to bear the consequences.
Okay, so we have the faculty that we can learn to make choices. In order to make choices, we need to learn to think, isn't it? Yeah? Is it relevant that we know what we think in order to make choices? Is it relevant what we think in order to make choices?
It's important.
Haven't we been making choices for centuries without knowing what we are thinking? Is that making sense? In the past, haven't we been much more ignorant, lack of self-awareness? We didn't know what we were thinking, yet we were making choices, weren't we? So here when they say the faculty of the reader have to determine their own conduct, that is an invitation that we become more aware of ourselves, that we choose consciously after we thought, we realize what we are thinking and what we will be doing. From which perspective are we invited to do this analysis? From a materialistic viewpoint or from a spiritual point of view?
From a spiritual.
Why?
I remember about the gospel in the beginning when they say the points of view, because if I think I'm only the body, obviously my choices won't be just about earthly things, but if I know I am a spirit temporarily here, I will make different choices.
Good.
I know I won't be here forever.
Okay.
Or just for a short period of time and then everything will die.
Okay, so which kind of choices could be training our free will already in making different choices from a perspective that we are immortal? What would we choose to do different here on earth? I know that I'm not a physical body. I know that I will not die. I know that the free will was given as a divine faculty to me for me to learn to make wise choices according to the Creator so that I promote my real happiness in my learning process. So which kind of choices would I choose to make here? Which would have a positive impact in the short, medium, and long term?
I think the first thing comes to me is to learn to use the time wisely.
Okay.
It's one, because sometimes 5 minutes may not seem much, but you can do a lot in 5 minutes.
Yes. So we would choose to learn to use the time wisely because we do understand within the natural laws in the universe that time belongs to God and is given to us for us to promote us within God. Correct? What other example would we choose differently here? Because we have the understanding of the immortality. Use the time wiser. Would I also promote myself and using the free willing, finding a ways to educate myself in terms of helping others, to engage myself more and more in a collective setting in order to free myself from the selfishness? And why is that important? What is the consequence of us using the free will and dedicating ourselves freely and spontaneously in helping others? We developed universal fraternity. Would we also say that is the way forward to conquer real happiness? There is no way, real happiness is not down just to buy a new dress or to travel to A to B or to have a car, although if I have money I can have that. But the real happiness is when we engage in the universal law, which is love, and engage in helping promote ourselves and others. Spontaneously, yeah? Then we carry on in the Spirit's book, question 844, where Allan Kardec asked the Enlightened Spirits, do human beings have free will from birth? How do we understand the question? What is Allan Kardec asking here? Do human beings have free will from birth?
I think it's talking about the birth of the physical body.
Okay, he's referring the question relating to matter, isn't it? When we are born or when we are reborn, there's a new physical body. Yeah? Do humans have the free will?
Not from birth.
Not from birth. But are they not immortal beings?
But they need certain faculties to express their free will when they don't have it when they are.
Okay, that is what comes to the answer, yes? When they say there is freedom to act things, there is the will to do it. In the earliest phase of human life, free will is almost non-existent. It is developed and changed with the development of the faculties. So how do we develop that? So we are immortal spirits. We have been living for centuries and centuries before, but when we come back to Earth once more, adopting a new physical body, we need to give time that our physical body develops so that our psychic, spiritual faculties can express. Is that making sense? Yeah? So it's not that the spirit loses the faculty that he conquered previously, but he needs the time to adapt towards the physical body. And then if you carry on in the question now, 872 is Spirit's book. That is what Allan Kardec presents in a theoretical explanation of the motive behind human actions. That part is fascinating when we read it, because it's quite long and it's so enriching in terms of helping us how to behave, how to develop our free will according to the natural laws, according to how we promote ourselves spiritually towards progressing, evolving, and really conquering the real happiness in a short, long time. Let's read it and then we go through. Cynthia, read it for us, please.
Human beings are not inevitably led into evil. Their acts are not predestined, and the crimes they commit are not the result of any sort of destiny. They may have chosen, as a trial in the form of repentance, a life in which they will be tempted to do wrong, either because of surroundings in which they are placed, or for circumstances that occur. But they always have their free will in determining their actions.
Would you like to comment? If you take it partially, human beings are not inevitably led into evil. We are reflecting about free will, yeah?
Yes, like he said, we can always choose what we will do, even if the circumstances around, because we might, like he said, you can say again, there is a question about it as well. If we have a certain tendency and we choose to be born, let's say, in a family who has the same tendencies, not for us to do evil, but us to overcome our bad tendencies. I think we always have a choice.
We always have. It's very important what he said here. Their acts are not predestined. And the crimes they commit are not the result of any sort of destiny. Why not?
It doesn't mean it was meant to happen.
Why not? Why is not meant the crimes to happen? Us, as immortal beings, who have been granted the possibility to come back to Earth with the objective to evolve, so it wasn't predestined for us to carry on committing crimes, correct? And why do we commit?
It's a choice we make, because we are all born to do good. I mean, free will.
It is the free will.
Nobody planned a reincarnation to kill someone or commit a crime. We have a lot of nice plans, but then it's up to us if we carry on with it or not.
Yes. So we come with our, let's say, new project of the new for the new existence, but we also bring on the perispiritual body or on the unconscious memory, we bring the old tendencies that we came with a new proposal to overcome. But when we are in the flesh, we don't remember that, and the old tendencies from the unconscious mind, if you don't work on the conscious level to re-educate ourselves, that may prevail again. But now, gradually, as we carry on evolving, because nothing stays stationary and no one, we will learn gradually first that we don't die, nobody dies. So if I choose to kill someone, that is my illusion, because in reality, I will never be able to kill the spirit, although I may kill the body, because the body, sooner or later, we will free ourselves from the physical body. But spiritually speaking, no one dies. We keep on alive. And then as more as we learn to value our own lives, we will also be capable of valuing the lives of others. Their acts are not, as we started, they may have chosen as a trial and form of repentance, a life in which they will be tempted to do wrong, either because of the surroundings in which they are placed or through circumstances that occur. Is that not part in the planet trials and expiations where we are as a school, where we immortal beings are learning? Is that not natural in our lives that we are attracted to situations, to people, that we learn to make our new choices according to our new project of existence? So if I committed crimes in the past, for instance, and I need to overcome these primitive tendencies, I may choose, with the help of my spiritual benefactors, those who are more evolved than I, to reincarnate in a family or a community where the crime still is present. It's not for me to commit, it's not for me to identify myself with those tendencies, it's for me to free myself, to become independent of those. Because we need to have the external element where we can test ourselves. Is that making sense? Yeah? And then we train in testing and resisting internally. We are already developing our free will according to the natural laws, according to the good for all, according to the law. And then it's still in the same part from the question 872, where we still learn. Spiritism informs that no temptation is irresistible. People can always ignore the invisible voice addressing their inner conscience. just as easily as they can ignore a human voice. They can always withdraw from the suggestions tempting them to do wrong by exerting their will against the temptation. How do we explain this now for those who may be studying with us? First phrase, very short. Spiritism informs that no temptation is irresistible. But we a lot on earth, we say, I cannot do it. I cannot overcome. Did we hear this? Yeah. And what is that then about?
I think we tend to associate temptation with matter a lot. And because we suffer the influence of matter, we might say, oh, I cannot resist it. But this is not true, because we are spirits and matter is our instrument. So we can always, if we want to, overcome it. Mm-hmm. I know it's the spirit says it's a little effort. Sometimes I feel it's a huge effort. But after,
I think for us it's huge. For them,
yes. But I think after the experience is over, you see it was just a little effort. But while we are in the experience, it seems to be huge effort.
I think it is because of our old vices, or old habits, or old conditionings. And then when we learn with the benefactor Joana de Anjos, when she says, when we say, oh, I cannot do it, no, it's impossible, and she comes and enlightens our ignorance when she says, well, when you say that, my dear brother and sister, actually you are saying that you don't want to do it yet. Because deep down our unconscious mind, we bring the defense mechanisms where we have our illusions, where we have our false talkings, and we elude ourselves. But as immortal beings, children of God, who bring within the potentials of the divinity, we do have the capacity to do. But we need to be willing, freely, and spontaneously to weaken our pleasure on the sensorial level. Because that is what we're supposed to overcome. On the sensorial, on the primitive level of experiences which were part in our journey, but they are no longer part in the present, where we are. Is that making sense? And then they carry on. People can always ignore the invisible voice addressing their inner conscience, just as easily as they can ignore a human voice. Is it easy to ignore a human voice? What do we think? Sometimes.
You have your husband talking without stopping.
When you have a husband talking without stopping, then it's not easy. So what do we need to learn here? Because that is a good example that they brought here, because we always can always ignore the invisible voice. How do we ignore the invisible voices? What are the invisible voices? What do we understand about the invisible voice?
Could be an intuition, could be literally someone telling you don't do this.
So could be our own voices from the unconscious, based on our own values, or on concepts, or on habits that we created, but could also be the interference from other spirits who can actually influence us. If we believe in that or not, if we are conscious or not, but we are all under this influence. So it's very important that we start to get to know who we are, and also identify our own patterns and change them gradually. Because when we understand if there is external interference, it's easy for us to separate. Not that it's important on the beginning to know if it's mine or not, if it's negative or if it goes against the laws of love, but it helps us also to get to know more who we are as a unique being in the universe, and become more independent, psychologically and emotionally, from other spirits as well. It's very important to be in control of what we think, and administrate our inner voices, and even in relation to human voices. We cannot ignore, as you mentioned, families, because family members are also immortal beings who are with us, and we are with them in order to learn from each other. And they are who they are. But we, again, through the faculty of free will that God presented us and gifted us, we can choose internally. It's almost like to switch off. It's not to be indifferent, not to identify with. Okay? And that is what we saw so far. And now we're still in the same question, 872. This part I always like since I became a spiritist. When we learn that the spirits therefore exercise free will in the spiritual world by choosing their next existence and trials to undergo. And human beings exercise free will to give in or resisting the temptations to which they have voluntarily subjected themselves. So let's develop. How do we understand that? Let's imagine that with those who may be with us who never heard about it, how would I explain that? That's very beautiful, because when they start saying spirits therefore exercise free will in the spiritual world, the majority of us, when we were with our spiritual guides in the spiritual world, they presented our, let's say, reality, what we did already so far, what we need to overcome, what we still need to learn, and then we freely choose. We use the free will in a responsible way while we were in the spiritual world, organizing our next existence project. And human beings exercise their free will now that we are in the flesh to develop an ability to resist or to give in to the old patterns. So that is very important here. So if you don't train the free will with responsibility, we can easily give in to our old tendencies. Is that making sense? Because the development of free will or freedom, the inner freedom, it is connecting with the other virtue, which is responsibility. And responsibility is nothing more than the internal autonomy of learning to make wiser choices.
And it helps us to understand as well that there is no punishment from God. It's just the consequences of our choices. Because I see with children downstairs, sometimes it's difficult for them to understand the difference between the consequences of their choices and punishment. Because for everything they see punishment, they say, God will punish you if you do this or that. But we try to explain it's not the way. Every time you make a choice, you have a consequence which could be good or bad, depending on the choices. It's the same with us.
It's the same. So yes, it's really giving rid of this punishment mentality and always refer the law of cause and effect. Every choice, there will be a consequence, and a consequence is a learning. If I choose correctly, I will have a positive consequence. If I did it wrong, I will have a consequence that I need to redo that aspect of my experience again, up to the point that I develop more inner freedom. What I find here interesting is that which they voluntarily subjected themselves. That is very important, because sometimes when we are on earth, which is a school for us as immortal beings to develop ourselves, we undergo some trials sometimes in our existence that we say, oh my God, when I'm studying, did I really voluntarily ask to go through that? And then we learn with the spirits, yes, you did voluntarily. And this carry on saying, sometimes you were nude and you cried and you said, please, please, I want that situation. I want to be with that person because I need to renew myself from within. Not always. Sometimes when I'm very rebellious, therefore I don't develop my free will accordingly, then the superior spirits will present to me the lessons that I need. Is that okay? Then we still move on to the next one. It's still the same question, 872. Susanna, read it for us, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I forget you, yes. Thank you for reminding.
The purpose of education is to challenge the wicked propensities, a duty that will only be able to be fulfilled truly when it is based on a deeper and truer knowledge of the moral nature of human beings.
So when we refer to the previous part where we have been reflecting about free will, and that we choose already in the spiritual world responsibly what to do, and now we are on earth using the faculty of free will responsibly to choose, are we under a proposal of education? Yeah? Which kind of education? When they say here, the purpose of education is to challenge the wicked propensities. What do we understand about education? Are there different references and definitions about education?
Yes.
What do we understand here about education?
We learn with Kardec that education is changing habits.
And it's changing from outside in or inside out? Inside out. Because why?
Because we change in what we think, we change in what we feel.
Because we have been created simple and ignorant and bring the laws of God within, and as more as we study and study ourselves, more we engage spontaneously developing our free will to re-educate ourselves within the natural laws that we bring within, isn't it? So it is within already, which is different than instructing someone. A duty that we'll only be able to fulfill thoroughly when it is based on a deeper and truer knowledge of the moral nature of human being. Who can develop that part? What is the deeper and truer knowledge of the moral nature of us? What comes to our minds when we read that? How would we express it? Can only be developed if it's based on a deeper and truer knowledge of the moral nature. How is that coming to us? So it's helping us to go beyond our physical understanding about matter, about whatever comes from the outside. It's referring to us, look within, go deeper. The knowledge about the natural laws in the universe. Based on that, we engage with the laws of God, which are based on love in itself, and the moral nature. Why do they say the moral nature of human beings? How is that? What comes to our minds? The moral nature of human beings. How is that for us? The values, ethical values, yes. Why do we have the moral nature? Because I refer to us, human beings. Why is that? Any ideas, Cynthia?
Is it the laws of God that is written in our conscience or not? This is why we have this moral nature.
So our nature is not biological, it's not physical, correct? Our nature is psychological and emotional, because essentially we are psychological and emotional beings. And as we have been created by God, simple and ignorant, but we bring those moral, ethical values within, which we could define as the virtues. We are essentially virtuous people, beings, but we haven't developed ourselves much into that. And now we are learning about free will. How can we develop the faculty of inner freedom so that we become more ethical, that we become more virtuous? As we studied in the beginning, and for us and within Spiritism, we have Jesus as our guide and model. And then it's still the same question 872. Without free will, there would be neither guilt in doing wrong, nor merit in doing right. How is that coming to us? Without free will, there would be neither guilt in doing wrong. Are there a lot of people, or even us perhaps in the past, that we did wrong without feeling guilty? Yes or no?
Sorry, basically,
if they don't have...
Speak a bit louder, please.
If they don't have moral values, maybe they're not going to feel guilty.
Are there still these days people who commit crimes and they don't feel guilty? Yes, there are a lot of it still. And now imagine 2,000 years ago, how was that? So even if I don't feel guilty today and I committed the wrongs, will I one day feel guilty? That was what I did wrong. What do you think?
I would say yes, Denise.
Why?
Because we evolve and then we come to the point when we realize what our actions where it might take it with responsibility and maturity. Some might be shocked. It depends, I think, on the spirit. But I think at some point we will.
So when we go back to the slide, when we start free will, when we start at the beginning, do you remember what was there? Which kind of kingdoms did we go through? The mineral, the vegetable, the animals, where the instinct predominates before we reach the human kingdom, where we are here now learning about to use the free will, learning to use reason, learn to think according to the natural laws. But we may still bring within, in this primitive state where we still are, we have not developed our emotional intelligence. Therefore, we carry on more on the instinct level without feeling what we are doing. But that, as you wisely said, is temporary. Because sooner or later, we are all under the law of evolution. Sooner or later, as a mortal being, I will enter in contact with that. And how will that happen? When we feel, now when we are in the flesh, the guilt complex. That is a signal that the material from the past is coming to the conscious level. And that is not, let's say, comfortable. Can be very uncomfortable sometimes, but it's very healthy when we address ourselves as immortal beings who have been here for centuries and centuries. And if that is coming out to the conscious memory, it's because I'm prepared to deal with that. And then I learn to do what in order to deal with the guilt complex.
Take responsibility.
Take responsibility. Using the free will here that we are talking and exploring today. Learning to use the free will to take responsibility. And responsibility is not a military command, it's an internal autonomy that I learn to forgive myself. Because as more as we study, we will understand that the guilt complex comes from my wrongdoings throughout my journey. And now I forgive myself and forgive others because I'm training to develop self-love. And in that way, we are re-editing our own history in a positive way as learners, because we did and still all do mistakes as learners. But gradually become more out of the instinctive reference, because we freely choose to develop more the love and compassion and the virtues, as we mentioned in the previous ones. And in that way, we become more fraternal with each other. We become more forgiving with each other as we are living together. Anything else? Then carry on in the question 845. Cynthia, read it for us. The question is, are the instinctive tendencies that human beings have at birth an obstacle to exercise of their free will?
If they are not very advanced, these tendencies may motivate such individuals to do wrong, and spirits who sympathize with the wrongs force them. However, no temptation is irresistible when there is a determination to resist. Remember that where there is a will, there is a way.
So if you look first on the question, are the instinctive tendencies that human beings have at birth an obstacle to exercise of their free will? That's a good question, isn't it? If we analyze ourselves as immortal beings, that means that I bring already my tendencies from previous existences. Therefore, is there any obstacle for me to exercise my free will in this existence? It's opportunities. We have two aspects here, don't we? What do the spirits teach us here? When they say, if they are not very advanced, these tendencies may motivate such individuals to do wrong. And spirits who sympathize with the wrong support them. Does it happen with us on earth? Human beings, referring to human beings? Yes.
And could you even have with parents?
Yeah.
I sometimes think it's funny certain tendencies that children shows from a very
earlier stage, isn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we help ourselves here to free ourselves from those who may still know us from the old ages through our old tendencies? How do we help to free ourselves? Who's the free will? Who's the free will? We are reflecting here about the free will. Train, develop this time to free will in goodness. Because as more as we train ourselves in goodness, in forgiveness, in universal fraternity, more we are self-protecting ourselves with those beings who still may be connected with us and know us from centuries back, but we now are decided and freely, spontaneously choose to do good. And in that way, we will not be influenced, because we are creating our internal, internal freedom, yes? Then we have the other aspect. However, no temptation is irresistible when there is a determination to resist. Remember that where there is a will, there is a way. How is that coming to us?
If you want, you can do it.
If you want, I can do it. Yeah? So why do we do it? Why are we centuries and centuries coming back?
Because we are stubborn.
We are stubborn? What else? Okay. We are stubborn. habit, but we all bring old habits, old conditions, old tendencies with us. But when we are in the new physical body, I think one of the aspects that impedes us or delays our development of the free will in choosing to be different is our selfishness or pride or personal interest through the old habits. They are very strong in our minds still. But the learning about the free will potentialize our initiative, our determination to overcome them, mainly because we will understand what will be the consequences of choosing in the wrong way. Although our tendencies sometimes, depending what they are very strong, but they are not strong more than the strength that we bring on the self-level onwards to overcome them.
I think you may have a tendency that you're aware that you may not want it, but it still happens.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you know that the tendency doesn't, it's not good for you, doesn't mean you stop when you want it to stop. So I think it's you have to sort of not feed the habit or make an impact. It's when you actually feed it to the point.
I think it is a part, as you mentioned previously, self-awareness is part of becoming aware of all negative and limited tendencies that we all have in different degrees and different types. And then when we study it and activate our internal potentials, we re-educate ourselves. Although we have the desire, we have the will to do, we choose not to. And not because I have to, it's not an imposition. It is a learning process. It is an inner loving talking that happens with us that we, although we could do A, but I choose to do B, for example. And as more as we do that, we actually are overriding our unconscious memory where the old habits are rooted and we are creating the new ones. Using the free will.
I find for myself, if there's a habit, a recurring pattern, if I resist doing this, it continually reinforces itself.
Yes, it reinforces.
So my approach to this habit has to be coming from the awareness to be okay with it first.
Mm-hmm.
Until if I'm not okay with it, I will constantly feel it. But if I'm okay with it, but don't condone it, then it discharges itself.
We still need to re-educate, yes. When we don't accept it, then we are intensifying it. Because we cannot change any aspect in us if you don't accept it. And acceptance doesn't mean to validate it. Acceptance is a part of learning to self-love, which is accepting our strengths and our weak points as valuable beings as we are. And then when we accept, we diffuse a lot of power that it has already. And then choosing in a loving way to re-educate ourselves, that is much easier once we accept, because we eliminate the power of resistance from the ego.
So acceptance is key.
Yes, it's fundamental. It suits.
You can't say, oh, I don't.
If you enter in that system, then we enter in an internal fight. And usually who wins is the ego. So through self-love, through self-acceptance is where we move forward. And then we carry on in question 780a, which says, how can intellectual process lead to moral progress in relation to free will, where we are studying here? And then the spirits say to us, by making human beings gain an understanding of good and wrongdoing, they can then choose between them. The development of free will follows the development of intelligence and increases the accountability of human actions. Are we as humanity more evolved intellectually than morally? Yes. How do we have evidence of that? Very even easy. Just look around, open your eyes. Yes, but we see what is happening on Earth. Yes, because we know Earth still is in a process where matter is over spirit, and also the evil over, let's say, or the wrongs over the goods. So we see that. So now, when they say here of intelligence, it increases the accountability of human actions. So here we are, what we said previously, developing free will means that we need to learn to become responsible, isn't it? And responsibility is the autonomy in choosing to do differently, according to what we are able already to assimilate. because what we are assimilating is very little comparing to the truth that we are gradually learning. But we can do great good if we understand better the moral aspect within ourselves, because we are essentially moral beings and not biological beings, not physical beings, but moral.
I think it helps our school to go to the society doesn't promote this.
It's very important. A spiritual pathway school, a meeting that we can discuss these subjects, because as learners, as we all are, when we have group studies, we can learn from each other, because sometimes I understand it one way, the other understands it another way, and then we promote ourselves as we are willing to learn. Yes, society still is lacking this. For a while, in the future, that will not be the case. But having this available for us today is very important. And if you keep on in question 780b, it says, how is it then that the most enlightened nations are often the most deviant? And then the superior spirits teach us, complete and integral progress is the purpose of life, but nations, like individuals, achieve it gradually. Until the moral sense is developed, they may even employ their intelligence in doing evil. Moral sense and intellect are two forces that are balanced over the course of time. How do we understand that regarding free will? Is that present currently on earth? Yes, we still see exactly what the spirits told around 160 to 80 years ago. And that is very present here. And we understand that nations are guided by individuals, and individuals are immortal beings who bring their development, what they achieve morally or not. And we are, as more as we evolve, let's say, guided in terms of becoming a more ethical society. And we can see these days, despite of all the shadows and the miseries that go on, there are a lot of people who are coming up and speak more about the morals and ethics. That is the signal of the phase that we already are changing on earth. It is important when we think about free will that we need to understand what we can do, what we can, or want or can and should. That is important in relation to the free will, because we have the free will, we can choose anything, isn't it? But it's relevant. Not all I want, I can do. Not all what I can do, I should do. Because I have a lot of wishes, a lot of desires. But if I consider myself as a mortal being, that I'm here responsible to promote my well-being, promote my real happiness, promote my evolution, although I have the freedom, the faculty given by God to choose whatever I want, I will choose what is according to God, because that will help me to grow. Do you want to say something?
Because everything is under the progress.
Everything.
It's important to see the world in a positive way. Overshadowed by what media wants you to see, what you think. Because if you don't see it, really freedom.
There are a lot of people who are, let's say, slaved by this negativity. Because again, in this phase of evolution, the forces of good and bad, they are together. It's almost like matching together. And unfortunately, a lot of people are focused on the negative, when in reality, there is great help from the good spirits who are enlightened and helping us. And we individually, in training our free will and knowing that we have the free will, internally we can choose completely not to connect with that. And that is inner freedom. And that is independence. That is what we do. If man were to conform strictly to the divine laws, he would undoubtedly avoid the most severe experiences and live happy on earth. Would that be possible? If you would train and develop our free will, remember our objective to be on earth is to evolve, and no one will evolve if we don't train and develop our free will. As more as we do that, more we live happily, even in the planet trials and expiations. Because goodness is within. The virtues are within. So choosing to leave them and develop and stimulate them, that is a free choice. And then the Spirit's Book 122 says, how can spirits possess freedom of choice between good and bad at their origin when they have not yet acquired self-awareness? Is there any principle in them, any tendency that forwards them to a path of preference rather than another? And then the spirits refer to us. free will develops as the spirit acquires self-conscious. All of us, we are under the law of progress, as you rightly said, and sooner or later, we all will develop this self-conscious as immortal beings, as beings who have all the potentials for us to renew in goodness. And the main point is the free will that we will be exercising. The Spirit Emmanuel teaches us in order, as we are coming to the end, all times freedom was used by the dominators on earth. The human being will always have conditional freedom. It is imperative to acknowledge that the dignified application of this superior virtue is very rare, that Emmanuel is a high spiritual benefactor. So again, as we are learning about free will, we want to be good and develop this virtue, because free will is a virtue, faculty that's given by God. And as more as we do it, we dignify ourselves, we dignify the life, we dignify the surroundings where we find ourselves temporarily. And still, Emmanuel says, that is only through freedom in submission to the duty faithfully fulfilled. Duty is referring to our reincarnation process, which we came for, which is always to develop free will in practicing goodness with ourselves, with our brothers and sisters at home, in the community, in workplace, wherever we are. We never come back to earth to do evil. Free will.
Submission, active.
Sorry?
Submission.
Active. Submission is not coming from not having my own opinion, not knowing what I'm doing. Submission is a virtue and is a very active movement within the spirit itself. Because we need to be constantly training ourselves internally towards the law of love which governs us. And submission will not diminish our value as a being, but on the contrary, as it is based on the real love that comes from God, it will strengthen us in terms of confidence, of security, of self-value. And then we learn here, free will is not absolute, but rather relative to the position occupied by the human being in the scale of spiritual evolution. How do we understand that? Now we come where you said previously, I like to say free will, but it's not relative. So where are you now with this?
Yeah, I think it's relative to the virtues or values we have achieved. The more evolved we are, the more free will we have.
Precisely.
Because I remember last week when I tried to plug in into reincarnation, and I didn't know what to do. So
Yes. It is relative, and there is nothing for us to, oh my God, then I'm not in control of my life. That is selfishness. Free will, in the stage where we are, we cannot conduct ourselves alone. We still are conducted by God and the superior spirits. And thank God that those loving beings are there in helping us. That we should always express our gratitude. And for us to conclude our study today, still with the words of the benefactor Emmanuel, who tells us, wherever you are, pacify, training the free will in terms of pacifying. Whatever the offense is, train the free will, develop it to pacify. And you will finally realize that the peace in the world is the gift of God, beginning with you. That is a great aspect for us to finish our reflections in relation to free will, that we can, through the re-education process, to develop our free will more and more in terms of become agents of peace, of harmony in the world, which is so needed currently. And in that way, we are coming to the end today. As always, finishing with these reflections of beings of goodness that we all are essentially. Praying within the unconditional love. Essentially, we bring the faculties called free will given by God for us as learners of ourselves to learn to use it wisely in order to promote ourselves spiritually, to live a happier life, to live a healthier life, to live with more harmony amongst each other. Train the free will towards the universal fraternity, comprehending that we are all brothers and sisters in humanity. And every human being, any spirit, essentially is a divine being. May we choose to promote our emotions towards good sentiments, favoring forgiveness wherever necessary, tolerance if that is required for us, developing self-love in order to re-educate ourselves in all the moments with everyone that is part in our lives, always remembering we are learners, mistakes as part of the learning, but forgiving and choosing to promote constantly our thoughts or actions towards the good of everyone, for all the good and all the time. May we see those aspects in our journey today and always. So be it. Each Christian.